Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman, and as always, thank you for your precious time and attention. I hope, and my goal is always to provide value if you turn this podcast on. Same thing goes for my coaching practice. Whenever, when I'm working with people, all I want to do is provide value in my workshops. When I speak, I want people to walk away with something they didn't have before or reminded of something they already did have. That's the only reason to do anything like that. Otherwise, it's just a vanity project. And I'm a little vain, but not that vain. So hopefully, this is all value based. And some of the guests have been incredible over the last few months and 100 and so episodes. Now, the Friday episodes are for me to speak about what I'm learning, what I learned when I was in corporate as a high-tech sales guy, and what I learn in speaking with my clients on a day-to-day basis. I just had two renewals in my practice. That gives me 100% renewal rate so far this year, which is really kind of blowing my mind. So there must be value in what I do, and I actually know what I do with people. But I go to networking meetings and I'm supposed to do my 30-second presentation, or if you're at a party and someone says, "So what do you do?" There's all kinds of ways of marketing, coaching, and talking about it. So you don't say, "Hey, I'm an executive coach," and everybody's eyes glaze over. So in working with the marketing, I have to really figure out what buzzworthy words, what pithy words do I use to describe what I do? What are my signature programs? I'm trying to figure out, because I'm running a business here, right? I do have 100% of my clients are referral based, which has been really great. But in order to grow this, in order to be exponential, I do have to have some marketing. I do have to have some branding so that people know who to send to me. I know how and how I can level up this business that I'm running and trying to create. Uh, so in doing that, I've been working with some branding people, and we're taking what I talk about naturally every day and trying to put it into categories so that people understand what I'm talking about. So the way I work is I'm putting everything in this midlife box, because for me, midlife starts when you start to figure out that the rubber meets the road at some point. That you actually are going to have to work for a living, that you are actually going to have the meat of conversations, that some of your dreams may or may not come true. When you start to realize some of these things, midlife starts to happen. And that can be in your 20s, but usually it's your early 30s. And in that time, what I call that merging time of midlife, I call that developing leadership. So I work with a lot of guys and women in their early 30s who have just been promoted to really high levels. They may not have the maturity and they may not even have the experience. Probably have the smarts, and that's why they got promoted. But now they need to really lean into this. So I work with these people who are now in what I'm going to call the hustle. So the hustle is that early part in your career when you now have some responsibility, you're making really good money, and you're all invested in your career. Your identity is in the hustle and how hard you work and how often you go to the gym and what your body fat percentage is, and if you look on Twitter, you'll see all the Twitter bros talking about that hustle, the hustle and grind, the Gary Vaynerchuk, the Grant Cardone, outwork everybody, at 2 o'clock in the morning. If you're sleeping, somebody else is out hustling you, kind of thing. For me, when I was, first got into high tech, it was the swag. I worked for a network appliance, NetApp now they call it, and we were crusading against the evil machine company EMC, who was the big company in our space, and we decided that. The battle of good and evil was being waged on Earth in the storage industry, and all our souls were at stake. That if we didn't beat the evil machine company, that this was a big thing, and we were just totally all taken up into that hustle and working just 7 days a week, long hours, in order to make that come to fruition. And when I talk about this, when I work with people that are in this particular time in their lives, the ones who will actually listen to me, it's usually later in life when people will listen to me. The people in that hustle part of the curve generally know it all, have enough energy that things aren't blowing back on them, so they don't really know that they could use guidance and help. But the ones who do listen I don't, they don't have to work any less hard. They don't have to be any less enthusiastic or idealistic. What I try to do is take them from the hustle to focus, to starting to figure out, what direction am I taking this ship in? If I'm running this fast, what direction do I want to take this in? What do I like? What don't I like? What gives me energy? What takes away from energy? What's sucking my soul? Because, when you're running and gunning that fast, 5 years can go by really fast, and you had no idea that you were just heading down a road that was completely soul sucking. Now, what do you do? So I help people figure out how to go from that hustle to focus. And then what happens after we're going through that hustle and focus, then we also go into what we call mid-level leadership. And you know that there's a whole cliche about mid-level managers. I call that the grind. This is when the luster starts to wear off and you realize that you just have to work really hard. Maybe you're having a family and you go home and you have to work hard, and then you go to work and you have to work hard. Some of your dreams have not come true and you're wondering if it's too late. You're looking at your spouse, you're wondering if that's the right person. So I call that the grind, this mid-level piece where everything is just, the world just seems to be asking so much of you that everywhere you turn, there's a responsibility being added to you. Your energy is starting to get sapped, right? And how are you ground like coffee, right? Now, the question is, how do you take that time in your life and move it to something more resilient? So that's what I work with my clients with, is taking them from that grind, from just always feeling like victimized by the world and put upon by the world, to something way more resilient. I was talking to my friend Jen Dalton about all this marketing stuff, and she says, Mark, the grind, it makes me think about coffee. You're putting the grind, and something cool comes out, and then you put water in it and coffee comes out. Well, that's kind of the resilience. Like, what could happen at this time? And then the third level that I talk about is the senior level leader. That can be an entrepreneur, and it doesn't necessarily equate to money. It could, but it's there's some semblance of success in the field that you chose, and I call that driven. And the reason I call that driven is because if you ask people to describe the people in this part of their lives, they will describe them as driven. They may not, in private conversations, talk about how the fact that they're not as driven as they used to be, but to the outside world, they are driven. They're focused on keeping their careers going. They're focused on keeping their companies going, growing their companies, but they haven't quite figured out what's next. So you get them into a private conversation, and these senior level leaders who are driven, who, to the outside world are just focused on this one thing, are really wondering about their impact. They're really wondering, are they doing what they love? They're really wondering, how are their relationships? They're starting to take stock. And I love to work with them to move them from just working for the sake of working, building, making money, getting respect and all that stuff, to impact. What is it they really want to do in the world? What do they want to impact? Whether they want to impact it now, or they want to start moving it into the next chapter of their lives. So if you can start to visualize, there's the hustle, the developing leader, the grind mid-level leader, and the driven senior leader. And these are all different stages in midlife. Over the next several episodes on Fridays, I'm going to talk about what holds people back in these three levels of midlife, of leadership. And I'm also going to talk about what actually can help you move forward in a more fluid and a more creative way, so that when you move from the hustle to focus, when you move from the grind to resilient, when you move from driven to impact, you can move through your life. And when you look back, it's just so much more rich. So I'm hoping this is helpful. Hope you listen on Fridays as I flesh this out. And as always, I appreciate you listening. Have a great day. Enjoy whatever is next. Love you.